When we look at future flight, there are so many different autonomous vehicles. There's eVTOL out there, there's hydrogen, there's electric. There are many, many different pathways out there to which way we could go. And to find out from Wisk's perspective, I'm delighted to have the CEO, Brian Yutko, here. Brian, first of all, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. First of all, if you could give maybe an overview of the craft that you have at Wisk.
Yeah, so we build autonomous electric aircraft. They are 4-seat aircraft that fly about 150 kilometers or so. They take off like a helicopter, they fly like an airplane, and they operate much closer to where people live and save people time.
Your craft itself is different to quite a few out there because, as you just said there, you have that fixed wing element. So when it comes to public perception, from a static point of view, it looks fairly similar to a fixed wing aircraft, just with rotating props. What happens with perception, and how do you get the public on board? Because it's the vertical bit that people get a bit confused about, and the electric bit as well. But let's just start with that. How do we get public on board?
In relation to how the aircraft flies, one of the things that we've done is to really focus a lot on the ride quality of this aircraft. So it's not hovering for a very long period of time, and it very quickly gets into a transition so that it's flying like an aircraft. When it's flying like an aircraft, it's actually very quiet, and there's not many vibrations on board the airplane, so it's a very pleasant experience for someone that would be on board.
So that's interesting in one point, because it behaves much more like a standard airplane as opposed to a helicopter, which can be quite bumpy, I suppose, on takeoff just there. But what about the autonomous aspect then? If you go into a project and you're autonomous, does that present more or less complexities when it comes down to certification?
These aircraft will not fly, from anywhere that they want to fly. I really think of it like a gondola in the sky, pre-surveyed routes where imagine taking a gondola and taking the wire away, and then architecting an aircraft system that can close a safety case that's as safe as today's commercial airplanes. So what we've done is we've started at the start, we've architected that safe system, we've demonstrated those kind of technologies in flight and in labs, and we've presented that to our regulator, and they're coming back to us with feedback. We've seen some great progress with the FAA on that front, and we're really excited to be pioneering that certification pathway.
How do you ensure safety when you're starting out from such an unusual pioneering position?
Yeah, so I don't think that the regulators are the bad guys in this case. I think one of the fun things about aviation for me is that it's an incredibly safe industry, and that's made possible, of course, by the companies and the engineers and the technicians that build these systems in the first place, but it's also made possible by a vigorous regulatory environment that sets an extremely high safety bar, and we expect to have to pass a similar high safety bar. So how to get through that is to use good engineering principles that this industry has developed. We know how to automate systems on board the aircraft, and this is taking the next logical step to make, for small aircraft, to make the aircraft responsible for the safe operation of the mission without having a pilot on board.
So when you come down to testing, how tough is it, the autonomous part, when it comes down to testing your craft with permissions to be able to get up in the sky?
It's actually quite a lot easier to be able to test in an uncrewed fashion, because from a risk standpoint, when you're testing an aircraft for the first time, you can learn things, you can discover things and test, and discovering things without a person being on board, without a person at risk, means that it's a little bit of an easier process.
Now what about use cases then? Because we look about tourism and we look at maybe travel between the two, like maybe airport to airport or tourism, destination to destination. Yeah. But there are other use cases out there I'm sure you've identified. And is it looking outside the box and thinking of maybe the more medical side of things that then will engage the public more, as opposed to it's just for the people with longer arms and deeper pockets they're going to be able to utilize your craft?
Part of what I'm excited about is, these electric airplanes, the Gen 6 that we're building and certifying right now, but the technologies that underlie that aircraft are going to create so many opportunities to address the markets that you just mentioned. With Gen 6 and aircraft that come after it, we in this industry, I think, are in this really amazing place of technological convergence, and there's going to be so many more opportunities for people to use aviation for productive means and do it in a very sustainable way.
Fantastic. So I think the final question, we always have to leave this, is we're looking at timescales. So when will we start seeing autonomous passenger flight?
So we'll be flying our Gen 6 airplane around the end of this year. And our certification program is in process, and we expect to enter into service later this decade.
Yeah, have it later this day. That's very soon, Brian. Thank you very much. These exciting times. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks.